Imagine you're a woman living 30,000 years ago. You've had 3 children, 2 of them didn't make it past their second birthday. The third is 7 years old and already helping the tribe gather food. You are exhausted. Your body has been through things most modern people will never experience. And yet, within a year, you will be pregnant again. Not by accident, not without understanding what is happening, but because somewhere deep inside the architecture of your mind, stopping feels more dangerous than continuing. That seems hard to understand from where we stand today. Modern people think about having children completely differently. We plan, we calculate, we weigh careers against timelines, finances against readiness, relationships against stability. Having a child is treated as one of the biggest decisions a person can make, and choosing not to have children or to stop after 1 or 2 is perfectly normal, unremarkable, sometimes even celebrated. So how did we get from there to here? How did a species that once couldn't stop having children become a species that has to consciously decide to start? The answer begins not with biology, not with medicine, not with contraception or culture or economics. It begins with math, the kind of math that doesn't need a pen or paper, the kind your body does automatically without asking your permission. Start with the number that explains everything. In the ancient world, childhood was extraordinarily dangerous. Not dangerous in the way modern parents mean when they say that word. Dangerous in a way that is almost impossible to imagine if you grew up with hospitals, vaccines, and clean water nearby. Estimates vary depending on the population and the time period, but across many hunter-gatherer studies, the pattern is consistent. Somewhere between 30 and 50% of children born in ancient human groups did not survive to adulthood. In some populations, the number was even higher. Think about what that means for a moment. You are not losing 1 child out of 100. You are losing nearly half, sometimes more. In a tribe of 40 people, the sound of a child dying was not a rare tragedy. It was something people lived with regularly, woven into the fabric of ordinary life in a way that modern people have almost no reference point for understanding. Now ask yourself a different question. If half the children born into your group don't survive, how many children does each adult woman need to have just to keep the group from shrinking? The math is ruthless. If a group needs 10 adults to function, to hunt, to gather, to protect, to carry knowledge from one generation to the next, and roughly half of all children die before they can become adults, then each generation needs to produce at least 20 children just to replace itself. Spread across the women of childbearing age in a small tribe, that number becomes significant very quick. This is not a choice anyone sat down and calculated. Nobody drew a chart, nobody held a meeting, but the groups that had more children survived, the groups that had fewer didn't. Over hundreds of thousands of years, that pattern shaped everything. But survival math alone doesn't explain the full picture, because biology did something more sophisticated than just making children possible. It made stopping feel wrong. Human bodies evolved inside environments where having children was consistently, reliably valuable. Not just valuable in an abstract long-term sense, valuable right now. Valuable in terms of who would carry water when you were sick, who would help defend the camp, who would remember where food could be found after you were gone. Children in the ancient world were not dependents in the modern sense. They were contributors almost from the beginning. By 5 or 6, children were helping gather food. By 10, they were capable of real work. By 15, many were fully functioning members of the group. The investment was real and significant, but the return was also real and significant. An adult in a small ancient tribe with 3 or 4 grown children was not burdened. They were protected, and so the human body developed systems that made reproduction feel urgent, rewarding, natural. The emotional pull toward children, toward nurturing, toward creating new life, none of that is accidental. None of that is simply cultural. It is evolutionary machinery built over hundreds of thousands of years, designed to keep a fragile species from disappearing. There is something else worth understanding, something that surprises most people when they first encounter it. Ancient women were not as constantly pregnant as it might seem. The spacing between children in hunter-gatherer populations was typically longer than many people assume, not because of deliberate planning in the modern sense, but because of something biology does automatically. Breastfeeding, when done frequently and extensively as it was in ancient populations, suppresses ovulation. A woman nursing a young child is significantly less likely to conceive another. In populations where breastfeeding continued for 2, 3, or even 4 years, this created a natural spacing between births. This matters because it changes the picture entirely. Ancient women weren't having a new baby every year. They were having children every 3 or 4 years. In many cases, over a reproductive lifespan of roughly 20 years, that still adds up to 5, 6, 7 children, but it means each child received significant time and attention. Each child was nursed, carried, protected, taught. The investment per child was enormous, which makes the losses even more devastating, because these weren't children who were barely noticed. They were children who were known, named, loved, grieved. The archaeological record confirms this. Infant burials from ancient sites around the world show deliberate care. Flowers placed, objects included, the same grief that makes no economic sense, the same grief that makes no survival sense, that we saw expressed in ancient dog burials is visible in ancient child burials too. Ancient humans mourned their children the way we mourn ours, with everything they had, and then they kept going. That might be the most striking thing about ancient human reproduction. Not the number of children, not the biology, but the emotional resilience required to lose a child and continue, to lose two children and continue, to carry the weight of that grief and still choose, consciously or not, to bring another life into the same dangerous world. Modern psychology has a name for what allows people to keep going after significant loss: post-traumatic growth, the capacity of humans to absorb devastating experiences and emerge not just intact, but changed in ways that increase their ability to survive and contribute. Ancient humans didn't have a name for it, but they lived it constantly. The women who survived childbirth, who raised children to adulthood, who navigated the grief of loss and the demands of an unforgiving world, these were not passive participants in human history. They were among its primary architects. The knowledge they carried about plants, medicine, childbirth, nutrition, child development, none of it was written down. All of it lived inside them, passed directly from woman to woman, mother to daughter, across thousands of generations. Lose enough of those women and the tribe loses something irreplaceable, something no hunt could replace, something no tool could substitute for. Then something changed. Not all at once, not in a single moment, but gradually across thousands of years, as humans moved from hunting and gathering toward settled life, toward agriculture, toward villages and towns and eventually cities, the math began to shift. In agricultural societies, children became even more valuable in the short term. More hands meant more fields planted, more crops harvested, more animals tended. Birth rates in early agricultural communities were often higher than in hunter-gatherer groups, not lower. The transition to farming didn't slow reproduction. In many places, it accelerated it. What eventually changed the equation was something different: survival rates. As medicine improved, as food supplies became more reliable, as clean water became more accessible, more children survived. And when more children survived, the pressure to produce as many as possible began, slowly, over centuries, to ease. The math that had driven human reproduction for 300,000 years began to change its answer. Not immediately, not smoothly, but eventually, in populations where childhood survival rates climbed from 50% toward 90 and then toward 99%, the ancient imperative began to lose its grip. If most children survive, you don't need 6 to end up with re-adults. You need 3 children, maybe 2, maybe 1, and yet something remained. Something that doesn't update as fast as circumstances change. Something older than agriculture, older than civilization, older than almost every other instinct the modern human brain contains. The pull is still there. Not in everyone, not equally, not in ways that override individual choice or circumstance, but enough that billions of people across wildly different cultures, different economies, different belief systems still feel it. The desire to create a new life, to hold something small and helpless and entirely dependent, to watch a child grow. You could explain that as culture, as religion, as social pressure, and in some cases, those explanations are accurate, but underneath all of them, running deeper than any of those explanations can reach, is something older. A 300,000-year-old instruction that your body received long before any of your other beliefs arrived. Keep going.
Bring them into the world. Nurse them. Name them. Teach them everything you know. Grieve the ones you lose. And then, when the grief has done what grief does, when it has moved through you and left you changed but still standing, begin again. That instruction kept your species alive through ice ages, droughts, predators, disease, and every catastrophe the ancient world could produce. It is the reason you exist. And somewhere inside you, no matter how modern your life has become, that instruction is still running, quietly, patiently, exactly the way it always has.